In the late afternoon in Elmwood Springs, Virginia, the sun hung low over the red brick rooftops, casting a soft golden glow on Maple Avenue. Malik Carter, 16 years old, walked along the sidewalk, the soles of his worn sneakers tapping out a steady rhythm. His backpack slung low on one shoulder, earbuds jammed in tight. He let the hip-hop beats of J. Cole drown out all the outside noise. In this suburban town, less than 10 miles from Fort Belvoir military base, Malik had learned to keep his head down, not out of fear, but as a way to steer clear of trouble. Yet, for a young black teen in a neighborhood full of white houses and fluttering American flags, keeping his head down was never quite enough. Maple Avenue stretches about half a mile, winding past two-story houses with neatly trimmed lawns. Malik walks by the home of Mrs. Clara Evans, a 70-year-old widow with hawk-like eyes. The window curtains flutter slightly, just like every other day. Malik feels her gaze on him, even though he doesn't turn around. "Let them look," his father, Nathan Carter, used to say, his voice deep and solid as a rock. "Don't let other people's eyes define you." Malik pushes his earbuds in deeper, keeping his stride steady. A few buildings down is Harper's General Store, the only grocery store in the neighborhood, where Mr. Raymond Brooks stands behind the counter with his glasses slipping down his nose. Malik usually stops by to grab a Gatorade after basketball practice, but today he just glances through the glass. Mr. Brooks is wiping down the counter, but his gaze is fixed on Malik, as if he's a potential threat, just for daring to walk by. Malik tightens the straps of his backpack, a familiar feeling rising up, that feeling of being scrutinized, judged, before he even opens his mouth. He turns up the music louder, trying to trap the outside world in a corner. The Carter family's home sits at the end of Maple Avenue, a simple two-story house with a white picket fence and a patch of daisies, lovingly tended by Malik's mum, Sophia Carter. Unlike other houses with shiny SUVs parked in the driveway or backyards boasting swimming pools, the Carter home exudes a rustic, welcoming charm. But if you look closely, you'll notice the front door lock is a bit unusual. Sturdier than what you'd expect in a peaceful neighborhood like Elmwood Springs. It's a remnant of Nathan Carter, the often absent father whom Malik has only met during brief visits between his mysterious business trips. Malik pushed the door open and stepped inside, the smell of coffee from the kitchen mixing with the faint scent of floor cleaner. Sophia was at the hospital. Her shift as a manager often stretched late into the evening. The house was quiet, with only the ticking of the clock on the wall breaking the silence. Malik tossed his backpack onto the chair and opened the fridge to grab a can of Coke. He stood there, staring at the family photo taped to the cupboard. Him, his mum, and his dad, all beaming on the beach at Virginia Beach 3 years ago. Nathan in the photo wore a grey t-shirt, nothing hinting that he was a Delta Force operative, a detail Malik only vaguely understood through his mum's whispers and the times his dad taught him how to stay calm under pressure. He sat down at the kitchen table, pulled out his math book, but couldn't focus. Today the gazes of Mrs. Clara and Mr. Brooks felt heavier than usual. Malik wasn't foolish, he knew they were not just curious. In Elmwood Springs, where the number of people of color could be counted on one hand, he had always been the different one. Not everyone was hostile, but the way they looked at him, as if he needed to prove he was harmless, made his chest occasionally feel tight. "Keep your cool, Malik," Nathan had said while teaching him how to tie a special knot. A skill his dad claimed was more useful than you think. Malik didn't ask any further questions, but he sensed it. His dad was preparing him for something bigger than these quiet streets. Outside, the sunset was fading, giving way to darkness. Malik had no idea that just a few miles from his home, a new police officer named Derek Walsh was patrolling, his eyes scanning the familiar streets of Elmwood Springs. In Walsh's mind, a town like this had no room for mysteries, and the Carter family with a missing father and a quiet son was becoming the center of suspicion. The night breeze gently swept through Maple Avenue, carrying the chill of early autumn as if heralding an impending storm. The sun had completely set, leaving Elmwood Springs bathed in a sickly yellow glow from the streetlights. Malik Carter quickened his pace on the sidewalk of Maple Avenue, his earbuds still playing music, but he had turned the volume down. There was something in the air tonight, not exactly danger, but a sense of unease, like when you know someone is watching you. He glanced over his shoulder, seeing nothing but the quiet parked cars lining the street. About 200 feet away, an Elmwood Springs police SUV cruised slowly, its headlights sweeping through the trees. Malik didn't think much of it. He just tightened the straps of his backpack and kept walking. The SUV slowed down, almost crawling along with his pace. Malik's heart raced faster, even though he tried to keep a cool face. He had seen this scene before, not with himself, but with the older guys on the basketball team, those times they talked about being pulled over by the cops just to check. Malik was only 16, just an 11th grader, not the kind of kid who caused trouble. But in Elmwood Springs, that didn't matter much. He turned off the music, pulled his earbuds down around his neck, and braced himself. The SUV's window rolled down, revealing the stiff face of a police officer Malik had never seen before. The man, in his early 30s, had a military-style buzz cut, his eyes narrowed as if sizing up a suspect. "Hey, you there, hold up for a second," his voice rang out, not loud, but sharp as a knife. Malik stopped in his tracks, standing about 10 feet from the car, his hands relaxed to avoid any misunderstanding. His father's words echoed in his mind. "If they stop you, just be polite, stay calm, don't give them any reason." "Yes, officer," Malik replied, his voice steady, even though his throat felt parched. The cop whose badge read Derek Walsh stepped out of the car, walking stiffly, his right hand hovering near his gun. He was a head taller than Malik, broad-shouldered, but there was something in his eyes that made Malik uneasy. It wasn't the confidence of someone in power, it was the aggression of a man looking for a reason. "What are you doing here?" Walsh asked, his eyes scanning Malik from head to toe, as if his hoodie and Nike shoes were evidence of a crime. "I live here, officer," Malik replied. "I'm walking home from school, Elmwood High." Walsh raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "You live here? Specifically where?" "Maple Avenue 142, just 3 blocks down," Malik said, pointing toward the end of the street. "Identification?" Walsh demanded, his voice icy. Malik hesitated. "I'm 16, I don't have a driver's license. I only have my student ID in my backpack." He slowly raised his hand, intending to grab his backpack, but Walsh barked, "Keep your hands where I can see them." Malik froze, his hands raised to chest level, his heart pounding. "The student ID is in my backpack, officer," he repeated, trying to keep his voice steady. Walsh circled around behind Malik, signaling for him to set his backpack down. "Open it up, dump everything out." Malik knelt down, unzipping the bag, pulling out each book, math, history, literature, along with a... Malik hesitated. This question was always tough to answer, not because he didn't know, but because his mother had once warned him, "Don't talk too much about your dad, Malik, for your safety." But Walsh was looking at him with a smirk, as if he knew Malik would try to dodge the topic. "My dad works far away," Malik said simply. Walsh stepped closer, his breath smelling of old coffee. "Far away? What kind of work takes him that far? Or is he the kind of dad who never shows up?" The words struck a nerve in Malik. He took a deep breath, recalling his father's words. "Don't let them pull you down to their level." He looked straight into Walsh's eyes, his voice steady but clear. "My father is Delta Force, sir. No boasting, no challenge, just pure truth." Walsh burst out laughing, his laughter echoing down the empty street. "Delta Force? Seriously, kid? Your dad's a superhero? Like Rambo or something?" He turned to another cop who had just parked nearby. "Hey, Carter, check this out. This kid says his dad is Delta Force." The other cop, named Carter, coincidentally sharing a last name with Malik, just forced a smile, clearly not wanting to get involved. Malik stood still, his face expressionless, even though inside he was boiling. He could smile, but he knew the truth. Walsh waved his hand, signaling Malik to pack up. "Go on, kid, and don't cause any trouble in this neighborhood." Malik picked up his books, slung his backpack over his shoulder, put on his headphones, but didn't turn on the music. As he walked away, Walsh's voice echoed behind him. "Delta Force, that's a good one. Must be special ops at the donut shop." 50 feet away, behind a large oak tree, Zoe Harper, Malik's classmate, stood quietly. Her phone was raised, capturing the entire confrontation, her finger trembling slightly over the record button. Zoe wasn't close to Malik, but she sensed that something was off. Her father, a human rights lawyer, had always said, "If you see injustice, document it. The truth needs to be seen." She tugged her phone into her pocket, her heart racing, feeling like she had just done something important. Malik kept walking, his shadow stretching long under the streetlights. But inside him, a small flame had begun to flicker. Not anger, but determination. Meanwhile, Derek Walsh sat back in the patrol car, a smirk still on his lips, but his eyes revealed a glimmer of doubt. There was something off about this kid, this family. He was going to find out no matter what it took. The door of 142 Maple Avenue clicked shut behind Malik Carter, as if to keep the whole world outside. In the dim light of the kitchen, Malik dropped his backpack onto the floor. The Carter family's house isn't anything special from the outside. White walls, clean windows, a cluster of yellow daisies in front of the porch planted by his mother, Sophia Carter. But inside, everything is arranged with an almost obsessive care. There are no pictures of Nathan Carter in uniform, no medals or military memorabilia on display, just a few family photos hanging on the living room wall. Malik and Sophia at a middle school graduation, all three of them beaming on the beach at Virginia Beach a few years back. Nathan in the photo wears a grey t-shirt, his warm smile contrasting with his sharp gaze, as if he's always keeping an eye on everything around him, even while taking a break. Malik walked into the kitchen and grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge. He sat down at the table, his gaze unintentionally landing on the back door lock. A modern combination lock, not something you'd find in an ordinary suburban home. He had asked his mom about it once when he was just 12. Sophia only smiled and said, "Your dad likes everything to be safe, that's all." Malik didn't press further, but he knew there was more to it than that. His dad, Nathan Carter, wasn't just a soldier, he was Delta Force, part of a world that Malik had only glimpsed through half-told stories and the times his dad taught him strange skills, like how to pick a lock with a paperclip, or how to tell if someone was following him. He opened the bottle of water, the soft fizz breaking the silence. The confrontation with Walsh made Malik uneasy, not out of fear, but because he had accidentally mentioned his dad. Sophia always warned, "Don't say anything about your dad's job, Malik. Not because it's bad, but because it's dangerous for our whole family." But when Walsh mocked him, suggesting Nathan was the kind of dad who abandoned his family, Malik couldn't stay quiet. He didn't regret it, but a part of him wondered if he had just opened a door that should have remained closed. The sound of keys jingling at the front door pulled Malik from his thoughts. Sophia walked in, her business attire replacing the nurse's uniform she used to wear before her promotion to manager at Fairfax Hospital, 15 miles away from Elmwood Springs. Despite a long day at work, she stood tall, her hair neatly pinned up, her sharp gaze sweeping across the room as if checking that everything was still in its place. "Hey, sweetheart," she said, setting her handbag down on the chair. "How is school?" "I'm fine," Malik replied, but his voice was a bit hesitant. Sophia paused, looking at her son. After 16 years of being a mother, she could read Malik like a book. "Something's wrong, isn't it?" she asked, not as a question, but as a statement. Malik intended to brush it off, but he knew he couldn't fool his mom. "I got stopped by the police on the way home," he said, his eyes fixed on the table. "A new officer named Walsh. He asked me what I was doing here, checked my backpack, and then asked about Dad." Sophia froze, her hand pausing mid-pour. "What did you say to him?" Her voice was low, but sharp as a knife. "I just told him Dad is Delta Force. No details," Malik replied, feeling a twinge of guilt. "He laughed and said I was making it up." Sophia set the glass down and stepped closer to her son. "Malik, how many times have we talked about this? You can't mention Dad's job, especially not to the police." "I know, Mum," Malik said, his voice dropping, "but he talks as if Dad doesn't exist, as if Dad abandoned us." Sophia sighed, her gaze softening. She pulled a chair to sit across from Malik, placing her hand on his. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone," she said. "Your dad works to keep us safe, to protect a lot of people, but that job comes with a price. We have to be careful." That night, while Malik was up in his room doing homework, Sophia sat alone in the kitchen, a cold cup of coffee in front of her. Her phone buzzed and a strange number flashed on the screen. She picked it up, her voice steady. "Hello?" All she heard was silence on the other end. No breathing, no sounds. "Hello?" she repeated, and then the line went dead. Sophia stared at the screen, her brow furrowing. This was the second time this week. She stood up, checked the door lock, her gaze sweeping over the quiet house. In Elmwood Springs, little things like an anonymous call suddenly carried an unusual weight. And deep down, Sophia knew, Officer Walsh was not just a fleeting trouble. The morning in Elmwood Springs began with soft sunlight filtering through a thin layer of mist, casting a deceptive calm over Maple Avenue. Malik Carter stepped out of house number 142, a backpack slung over his shoulder, earbuds loosely hanging from his ears. After the confrontation with Derek Walsh the day before, he tried to keep everything normal, but an unsettling feeling clung to him, like the long shadow beneath his feet on the sidewalk. He glanced over at Claire Evans' house. The curtains remained still, but that did little to ease his mind. In this town, invisible eyes were always lurking. 3 miles away, at the Elmwood Springs police station, Derek Walsh sat in his patrol SUV, his eyes glued to the tablet screen. He had just wrapped up his night shift, but instead of heading home, he was digging into information about the Carter family. The name Nathan Carter popped up in a police database, but the record only had a few basic lines. Married to Sophia Carter, owns a house on Maple Avenue, no prior convictions. When Walsh tried to search military records, a bright red message flashed on the screen. Classified, high-level access required. Walsh frowned, gripping his cold coffee cup tightly. Delta Force, what the hell? He muttered. The kid Malik might be spinning tales, but this alert was no joke. There was something off about this family, and Walsh was determined to uncover the truth. At Elmwood High, Malik walked into the crowded hallway, trying to avoid the curious gazes of his classmates. The news about the confrontation with Walsh had spread quickly thanks to Tyler Brooks and his friends, the son of the owner of Harper's General Store. Tyler, tall with sandy blonde hair, stood at the corner of the hallway with his crew, laughing loudly as Malik passed by. "Hey Carter," Tyler called out, his voice echoing through the hall. "I heard your dad is a super spy, right? Or is he a master chef at the donut shop?" His friends burst into laughter and a few other students turned to look. Malik didn't stop, keeping his eyes fixed straight ahead. "Ignore them," he told himself, remembering his dad's words. "Only the weak need to shout to prove they're strong." But Tyler wasn't going to let it go that easily. He stepped forward, blocking Malik's path. "What's the matter, Carter? Too scared to say anything? Your dad probably left home when you were still in diapers, right?" Malik stopped, gripping the straps of his backpack tightly. He looked Tyler straight in the eye, his voice low but sharp. "Mind your own business, Brooks. My dad doesn't need you worrying about him." Without waiting for a response, Malik slipped past, leaving Tyler with a twisted smirk. But inside, Malik felt a small cut form, not because of Tyler, but because he knew there was some truth to that taunt. Nathan Carter was always absent, and Malik never quite knew where he was. Meanwhile, Zoe Harper sat in the school library, her phone hidden under the table. She replayed the video of Malik's confrontation with Walsh, her finger gliding hesitantly across the screen. Her father, a human rights lawyer in Fairfax, had once said, "The truth only has power when it's shared." Zoe wasn't close to Malik, but the way Walsh looked at him as if he were a threat just for existing felt wrong to her. She took a deep breath, uploaded the video to an Elmwood Springs community forum, and added a caption. "This is what's happening in our town. A student is being harassed just for walking home." She hit send, her heart pounding, unsure of what she had just started. In just a few hours, the video spread all over social media. At Harper's General Store, Mr. Raymond Brooks checked his phone, shaking his head as he saw Walsh inspecting Malik's backpack. Mrs. Clara Evans, sitting on her porch, listened to her granddaughter talk about the video, a hint of guilt in her eyes. At the town's central cafe, a few people whispered their support for Malik, while others muttered, "That kid must have done something for the police to stop him." Elmwood Springs was divided, and the Carter family found themselves unwillingly in the spotlight. Walsh found out about the video at noon when a colleague sent the link through the group chat. He watched it, his face burning with anger. "Those damn kids," he growled, slamming his hand down on the steering wheel. But instead of backing down, the video only fueled his determination. He drove to Maple Avenue, stopping 500 feet from Carter's house, his eyes glued to the modest home. No strange cars, no unusual lights, but Walsh could sense it. This family was hiding something big. He called a contact at the Fairfax station, asking for a deeper dive into Nathan Carter. "Find anything, even if it's just a utility bill or a plane ticket," he ordered. "I need to know who this guy is." That evening, Malik sat at the kitchen table, working on his math homework, but his mind was drifting far away. Sophia walked in, still dressed in her work clothes, her eyes filled with concern as she looked at her son. "Are you okay?" she asked, placing her hand on his shoulder. Malik nodded, but Sophia wasn't easily fooled. "I heard about that video," she said. "The girl who recorded it, Zoe, right?" Malik looked up, surprised. "You know about it?" Sophia sighed and sat down. "The whole town is talking about it, Malik, and I'm worried. That cop, Walsh, he's not the kind you can just brush off. Malik recounted the incident, from the way Walsh mocked his father to the look of suspicion on his face. Sophia listened, her grip tightening around the glass of water, but she didn't interrupt. When he finished speaking, she stood up, walked to the window, and pulled the curtains tighter. "You can't let this happen again," she said, her voice low but firm. "If Walsh asks anything else, just say your father consults for the government. Nothing more, nothing less." Malik nodded, but questions bubbled up inside him. "Mom, why do we have to hide? If Dad is doing good work, why can't we just say it?" Sophia turned back, her gaze both gentle and serious. "Because your father's job isn't just a job, Malik. It's the stuff people never see on the news. The things that keep us safe, but also make us vulnerable if they're exposed." She paused, as if weighing whether to say more. "Your father isn't just a soldier. He's the guardian of what matters most. And sometimes that means keeping secrets, even from us." That night, after Malik had gone to his room, Sophia sat alone in the living room, the dim light casting shadows on her face. Her phone buzzed, another unknown number. She answered, her voice icy. "Hello?" This time there was a faint breath on the other end, then the line went dead. Sophia set the phone down, her hands trembling slightly. She opened the desk drawer and pulled out another phone, small, black, unbranded. She typed a message. "Another call, Walsh is digging." The message sent, and a few seconds later, the reply appeared. "Noted, stay safe." No signature, no trace. The next day at school, Malik felt the shift. A few classmates, like Zoe Harper, looked at him with sympathetic eyes, but Tyler Brooks's crew was a different story. "Hey, social media superstar," Tyler called out as Malik walked across the courtyard. "You think that video makes you a hero? Your dad's probably hiding out in Mexico, right?" Malik paused, took a deep breath. He turned to Tyler, his voice calm but sharp as a knife. "If you want to talk about my dad like that, why don't you just ask me who he really is?" Tyler stepped back, taken aback by Malik's composure, but the smirk still lingered. At the same time, Walsh left the police station, clutching a stack of notes. He had found an acquaintance in the military who promised to dig deeper into Nathan Carter. "If he's Delta Force," Walsh muttered, his eyes flashing with obsession, "then he's hiding something right here in Elmwood Springs." Little did he know that, in another part of town, Zoe Harper was uploading more evidence online, a photo of Walsh standing near Carter's house last night, his gaze clearly filled with suspicion. The truth was spreading, and Elmwood Springs was about to face a storm that no one saw coming. 3 days after Zoe Harper's video went viral throughout Elmwood Springs, the atmosphere in town felt heavy, like the air before a storm. Malik Carter stepped out of 142 Maple Avenue, the early morning sun shining on his worn-out basketball shoes. He wasn't wearing headphones today. He wanted to hear everything around him. Since the video surfaced, the way the neighbors looked at him had changed. Mrs. Clara Evans now regarded him with a hint of guilt, while Mr. Raymond Brooks, at Harper's General Store, silently nodded as he passed by. But Malik knew that this calm was just a facade. Derek Walsh was still out there, and he wasn't the kind of guy who easily forgot. 10 miles outside Elmwood Springs, on a dirt road near Fort Belvoir, a black, unmarked truck came to a stop under the shade of an old oak tree. Nathan Carter stepped out, an average but sturdy figure, his combat boots caked with red dust from some far-off place. He wore jeans and a grey t-shirt, nothing flashy, but the way he stood back straight, eyes scanning the surroundings in a quick 360-degree sweep, radiated the alertness of someone who had survived battlefields that ordinary folks only see in movies. Nathan had just cut short a mission in the Middle East to return home after Sophia sent an urgent message through the secure channel. Malik is targeted, Walsh is digging. Well, he didn't say a word to his Delta Force team, simply handed off the mission to 2 trusted teammates, Miller and Jackson, and boarded the plane immediately. At Elmwood High, Malik was playing basketball on the public court after school, sweat streaming down his forehead. He shot the ball into the hoop, his movements smooth, trying to forget the taunts from Tyler Brooks that morning. "Your dad is probably hiding in some cave, Carter." But before he could take his third shot, the distant wail of a police siren pierced the air. 2 patrol SUVs sped toward him, their red lights flashing brightly. Malik stopped, the ball dropping to the ground and rolling a few feet away. His friends, Jamal and Chris, also halted their game, their expressions filled with concern. Derek Walsh stepped out of the first car, handcuffs in hand, his face flushed with a mix of anger and triumph. "Malik Carter," he called out, his voice echoing across the yard. "You need to come with me." Malik stood still, his hands relaxed, trying to stay calm as his father had taught him. "What for, officer?" he asked, his tone steady even though his heart was pounding. Walsh moved closer, the handcuffs glinting in the sunlight, disturbing the peace. "Witnesses say you were fighting here yesterday." Malik frowned. "I was home all last night. My friends can vouch for me." Jamal stepped forward, his voice filled with frustration. "He hasn't done anything. We've been playing ball here all week." But Walsh didn't care. He raised his hand, signaling for two other officers to move in. "Step back, hands behind your back," he ordered, his tone icy. Malik took a deep breath, slowly complying, feeling the cold metal clamp down on his wrists. A crowd of students began to gather, a few murmuring in protest, but no one dared to intervene, except for Zoe Harper. From a distance she raised her phone, capturing the scene, her hands trembling but unwavering. As Walsh shoved Malik into the patrol car, a figure appeared at the edge of the football field. Nathan Carter stepped forward, moving slowly and quietly, but his presence shifted the atmosphere. He wore a light jacket, hands tucked in his pockets, his gaze sharp as a knife sweeping over Walsh and the two other officers. The crowd parted, instinctively making way. Walsh turned around, momentarily surprised, but quickly regained his aggressive demeanor. "Who the hell are you? This is a police matter," he snapped. Nathan stopped 10 feet away from Walsh, his voice deep and calm like a lake before a storm. "I'm Nathan Carter, Malik's father. Let my son go right now." Walsh scoffed, still gripping Malik's shoulder. "His dad, huh? You're the Delta Force superhero this kid brags about? I don't see any paperwork to back that up." Nathan didn't respond. He simply pulled a red, no military ID from his back pocket, the kind that anyone who has served knows signifies ultimate authority. He handed it to the nearest officer, a middle-aged man named Harris. Harris looked at the badge, his eyes wide, then whispered something to his colleague. Walsh frowned and snatched the badge from Harris's hand. He stared at it, his lips pressed tightly together as he read the words, "Classification, Delta Force, Operation." "What is this? A fake document?" Walsh barked, but his voice faltered, lacking confidence. Nathan stepped closer, his tone steady. "It's real, and you're holding my son without legal grounds. Let him go, or I'll take this higher than your little police station." Walsh hesitated, his eyes scanning the crowd, realizing every gaze was fixed on him. He tossed the card toward Nathan, signaling for Harris to uncuff Malik. "Fine," he said, his voice dripping with bitterness. "But I'm not done with your family yet, Carter. There's something dirty going on here, and I'm going to find out what it is." Malik rubbed his wrist, stepping up beside his father, his expression a mix of relief and caution. Nathan placed his hand on his son's shoulder, saying nothing more to Walsh. He led Malik away from the field, leaving Walsh seething with anger. When they reached the corner of Maple Avenue, Nathan stopped and turned to Malik. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice gentle yet strong. Malik nodded. "I'm fine, Dad. But why are you home so early?" Nathan gazed into the distance, toward the horizon where Fort Belvoir loomed. "Your mum called. When family is in trouble, there's no mission more important." That night at the Carter home, Sophia held Nathan tightly as he walked in. "You're back," she whispered, her eyes red and puffy. Malik sat at the kitchen table, watching his parents, feeling both safe and uneasy. Nathan briefly explained he had just returned from a mission in the desert, where he and his Delta Force team were hunting down a terrorist target. "I didn't want to come back early," he said, holding a glass of water. "But Walsh, he's dangerous, not because he's strong, but because he doesn't know who he's up against." As the Carter family reunited, Walsh couldn't sit still. He drove home a small apartment 2 miles from downtown Elmwood Springs and dove into his investigation. He called a contact at the Fairfax military base, asking them to dig up any information on Nathan Carter. "Find anything, even a flight or a call," he ordered, his voice hoarse from lack of sleep. But when he couldn't find anything through official channels, Walsh crossed the line. He drove to Maple Avenue at midnight, stopping 300 feet from the Carter house, turning off his headlights and watching. Under the dim moonlight, Walsh sneaked out of the car, carrying a small toolkit. He made his way around to the back of Carter's house, where there was a small wooden shed next to the fence. With a few swift movements, he picked the lock on the shed door, a skill he had picked up from his failed military training. Inside, everything was neatly organized. Gardening tools, a lawnmower, a few old paint cans. Walsh was almost ready to give up when his eyes caught sight of a small metal box on a high shelf, hidden behind some dried-out flower pots. He reached up and pulled it down. The old, battered box, its lock unlatched, opened with a creak. Walsh's heart raced. Inside were a few foreign coins, a notebook filled with scrawled notes like some kind of code, and a photograph. In the picture, Nathan Carter, looking younger and dressed in desert camouflage, stood next to 3 other men, their faces obscured in shadow, no badges, no insignia. But Nathan's gaze was piercing, as if he could see right through Walsh, even in just a photo. Walsh snapped pictures of everything with his phone, his hands trembling slightly. "I know now," he muttered, a crooked smile creeping onto his lips. "You're not an ordinary man, Nathan Carter." He left the warehouse, locked the door, and returned to his car with new evidence. Walsh had no idea that from a dark corner 50 feet away, a hidden camera from the Carter family had captured his every move. In the kitchen of house number 142, Sophia stared at her. The sky over Elmwood Springs darkened as dusk settled in. A chilly breeze swept through Maple Avenue, carrying the scent of dry grass from the nearby fields. Malik Carter sat in his room at 142, the glow from his phone screen illuminating his face. A message from Zoe Harper had just come in. "Meet me at the field at 6. It's important." Malik frowned, his finger gliding across the screen. Zoe didn't usually text like this, but after the video incident, he believed she had a good reason. He glanced at the clock, 5:45 p.m., then stood up, threw on his hoodie and called down to the kitchen. "Mom, I'm heading out for a bit." Sophia Carter, washing the dishes, replied, "Don't be gone long, Malik, and be careful." Nathan Carter sat in the living room, his eyes glued to the laptop screen, replaying the footage of Walsh breaking into the warehouse last night. He didn't say anything to Malik about it. It wasn't the right time. But he knew this cop was crossing the line. Malik stepped outside, the biting cold air making him shiver. He hurried toward the public basketball court, 800 feet from his house, the dim streetlights guiding his way. When he arrived, the court was deserted, no sign of Zoe, no one at all. Malik frowned, pulled out his phone to text her back, but before he could hit send, an old white truck came barreling around the corner, headlights off. The door swung open, and Derek Walsh stepped out, his eyes bloodshot, a handgun gripped tightly in his hand. "Get in the truck, kid," he barked, his voice rough and menacing. "Don't make me shoot." Malik froze, his hand still gripping the phone. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice trembling but trying to stay calm. Walsh stepped forward, snatched the phone from Malik's hand, threw it to the ground and stomped on it. "Your old man," he said, shoving Malik toward the car. "I know who he is, and you're gonna help me prove it." Before Malik could react, Walsh slammed the butt of the gun against his head. Malik's head buzzed, his vision blurred, and he crumpled to the ground. Walsh dragged him into the back seat of the car, bound his hands with plastic ties, and sped off into the darkness. The car drove 5 miles south of Elmwood Springs, arriving at an abandoned construction site near Highway 95. Rusty steel frames and piles of broken concrete were scattered under the moonlight. Walsh stopped the car, yanked Malik out, and shoved him into a hidden corner behind the debris. Malik came to, his head pounding, dried blood sticking to his forehead. He looked at Walsh, who had lost all composure, sweat-soaked hair, hands trembling as he aimed a gun at him. "Call your dad," Walsh ordered, tossing Malik a cheap phone. "Get him here right now or I'll shoot." Malik took a deep breath, recalling what Nathan had taught him. "If you get caught, don't panic. Find a way to buy some time." He looked straight at Walsh, his voice steady. "My dad isn't here. He's away on business." Walsh scoffed, stepping closer, the gun barrel just inches from Malik's face. "Don't lie to me, kid. I saw him in the warehouse. He's special forces, isn't he? A professional killer hiding out in this town. Call him, or you're dead." At the Carter house, Sophia realized Malik had been gone too long. She called his phone, but all she heard was the long beep. His phone was off. She dashed into the living room, her face pale. "Nathan, Malik hasn't come back." Nathan jumped up, checking his watch. A red dot was blinking on the small screen. The GPS signal from Malik's watch, which he had secretly installed when Malik was 14. "The construction site near Route 95, he said, his voice as hard as steel. He pulled a small black bag from the cabinet and opened it. A handgun, a dagger, and a tactical flashlight. "Call the police," he told Sophia. "But don't wait for them. I'm going ahead." Nathan drove his black truck to the construction site in 10 minutes, speeding nearly 80 miles per hour down the empty road. He stopped 500 feet away, turned off the engine and quietly approached. Under the moonlight, he saw Walsh standing next to Malik, a gun aimed at the boy's head. Nathan didn't hesitate. He moved like a shadow, silently maneuvering around the concrete debris, taking advantage of the darkness and his Delta Force training. Each step was precise, utterly silent, as if he blended into the surroundings. Walsh was screaming, his voice breaking with madness. "Tell me, kid, where is he? I know he's a threat. I'll expose everything." Malik, his hands tied, looked straight at Walsh, his voice quiet but firm. "You're wrong. My father isn't a bad man. You're the one who's out of control." Walsh raised his hand to strike, but before he could touch Malik, a dark figure lunged forward. Nathan appeared from behind, his left arm locking around Walsh's neck while his right hand swiftly yanked the gun from his grasp in a flash. Walsh struggled, but Nathan tightened his grip, forcing him down to the ground with a knee pressed into his back. "Don't move," Nathan said, his voice low but sharp as a knife. He pulled out a dagger and sliced through Malik's bindings, never taking his eyes off Walsh. "Are you okay?" he asked, his tone softening for the first time. Malik nodded, rubbing his wrists, his eyes red but not crying. "I'm fine, Dad." Walsh lay on the ground, gasping for breath but still growled, "Who are you, Carter? A killer? I'll make sure the whole world knows." Nathan got to his feet, pulled Walsh up and tied his hands with the very plastic cord he had used on Malik. "I'm just a man protecting my family," Nathan said, his voice icy. "And you, Walsh, you just dug your own grave." The sound of a police siren wailed in the distance. Sophia had called for backup. 2 patrol SUVs sped in, their red lights flashing brightly. Officer Harris, who had seen Nathan's badge before, stepped out, his eyes widening at the scene. Walsh was tied up. Harris looked at Walsh, then at Nathan, clearly understanding that he was no ordinary man. "Take him to the station," Harris ordered his colleague. Walsh was dragged into the car, still mumbling, "I'm not done with you yet, Carter." But the fire in his eyes had faded, leaving only fear and despair. As the police left, a crowd began to gather near the site. A few Elmwood Springs residents had heard the news over the police radio. Zoe Harper stood among them, phone held high, capturing the moment of Malik embracing his father. She didn't post the video this time. This was a private moment, not a tool for activism, but she knew this story would change the town forever. Nathan led Malik to the car, his hand still resting on the boy's shoulder. "You did great," he said, his voice warm and deep. "Keep your cool, buy some time, just like I taught you." Malik gave a weak smile, the first one of the day. "I learned from the best, Dad." As they got into the car, Nathan glanced in the rearview mirror, watching the police lights fade into the distance. He knew Walsh wasn't the final threat, but tonight, his family had won. At home, Sophia ran out and hugged Malik tightly as he walked in, tears streaming down her cheeks. Nathan stood behind, quietly putting the black bag away in the cabinet. He looked at his wife and child, feeling a mix of relief and caution. Walsh had been caught, but what he had unearthed, the photos, the codes, might have already spread beyond their reach. He sat down on the sofa, rubbing his temples. "Take a break," he said to Malik and Sophia. "Tomorrow we'll talk." Outside, Elmwood Springs is engulfed in darkness, but the echoes of tonight still resonate. A deranged cop, a resilient teenager, and a father willing to do anything to protect his family, this story won't end easily. The dawn light broke over Elmwood Springs, painting the rooftops along Maple Avenue in a golden hue after a long, tumultuous night. Malik Carter sat at the kitchen table of house number 142, holding a warm cup of milk that Sophia had just made, his eyes still carrying a hint of fatigue from the kidnapping ordeal. His head was bandaged. The wound wasn't deep, but it was enough to serve as a reminder of what had happened. Sophia stood by the stove, stirring a pot of oatmeal, her gaze never leaving her son. Nathan Carter sat across from Malik, holding a cup of black coffee, his demeanor calm, but his eyes revealed a lingering vigilance. "Are you really okay?" Sophia asked for the third time, her voice soft but filled with concern. Malik nodded, forcing a weak smile. "I'm fine, Mom. Dad handled everything." Nathan set his coffee cup down and looked at his son. "You did great, Malik," he said, his voice warm and reassuring. "Staying calm and buying time, that's what I taught you, and you nailed it." Malik looked at his dad, feeling a mix of pride and a bit of unease. "But what if you hadn't made it in time?" he asked, his voice dropping. Nathan leaned in, his gaze sharp yet gentle. "I always make it in time when family needs me, Malik. That's my promise." At the same time, at the Elmwood Springs police station, Derek Walsh sat in the holding cell, his hands cuffed to a metal table. He stared at the grey wall, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep and simmering anger. Officer Harris walked in, holding a thick file, his voice cold. "You're done, Walsh. Kidnapping, breaking and entering, abuse of power. You're not getting out of this." Walsh let out a harsh, raspy laugh, his voice trailing off. "Carter is a threat. I was just doing my job, protecting this town." Harris shook his head, setting the file down. "You're not protecting anyone. You're obsessed, and now you're paying the price." News of the kidnapping spread through Elmwood Springs like wildfire across dry grass. By noon, the local station aired a report. Former officer Derek Walsh has been arrested after kidnapping high school student Malik Carter at an abandoned construction site. The boy's father, a veteran, subdued the suspect before the police arrived. Footage from Zoe Harper's earlier days was replayed, along with images of Walsh being led away in handcuffs. The whole town was buzzing. From Harper's general store to the downtown cafe, people couldn't stop talking about it. At Elmwood High, Malik didn't show up to school that day, but his story was still the center of attention. Zoe Harper sat in the library, her fingers scrolling through her phone, reading the comments on the video she posted. Some people praised her bravery, but there were also nasty messages. "You're overreacting, girl. Now the whole town is in chaos because of you." Zoe sighed and turned off the screen. She had no regrets. She believed the truth needed to come out, even if it meant tearing Elmwood Springs apart. Tyler Brooks, the guy who used to mock Malik, stood in the hallway with his friends, his voice lower than usual. "I can't believe Walsh is that crazy," he said, hands stuffed in his pockets. "Carter wasn't lying about his dad, huh?" His friends nodded, for the first time not laughing. Malik's resilience in front of Walsh had changed the way they saw him, no longer just a black kid trying to prove himself, but someone they unexpectedly respected. The next day, a community meeting was held at the Elmwood Springs Auditorium, just a mile from Maple Avenue. Over 200 residents gathered, from Mrs. Clara Evans to Mr. Raymond Brooks, along with police officers and town council representatives. Sophia stood up to speak first, her voice strong yet slightly trembling. "My family doesn't want trouble. We just want to live peacefully like everyone else. But what happened to Malik, being harassed, being kidnapped, cannot be overlooked. We need to change the way we see each other in this town." Nathan sat in the back row, saying nothing, but his presence commanded attention. When it was his turn, he stood up, tall and straight as a pillar, his deep voice resonating throughout the hall. "I'm not here to boast or threaten," he said. "I'm a soldier, someone who has served to keep this country safe. But last night, I wasn't fighting an enemy far away. I was fighting to protect my son, right here. If Elmwood Springs wants to be safe, we need to start with how we treat each other." Nathan's words resonated with many. Clara Evans, who had once looked at Malik with suspicion, stood up, her voice trembling. "I was wrong. I judged that boy without knowing the truth. I'm sorry." Raymond Brooks nodded from afar, adding, "We need the police to protect us, not to threaten our children." The meeting lasted 2 hours, concluding with a decision to reform the Elmwood Springs police force, stricter background checks, training on discrimination prevention, and a civilian board for oversight. A month passed, and the wound on Malik's head healed, but the memories of that night lingered on. He returned to school, greeted in a completely different way. No more curious glances or mocking words from Tyler Brooks. Zoe Harper approached him on the playground, her smile shy. "I'm glad you're okay," she said. Malik nodded, replying, "Thanks, Zoe. Your video. It made a difference." Zoe smiled wider. "I just did the right thing." Nathan didn't jump back into his mission right away. He took some time in Elmwood Springs, turning his family's experience into action. He bought a piece of land near Fort Belvoir, just 8 miles from town, and began building the Carter Leadership Academy, a training center for youth focused on leadership skills, self-defense, and resilience. On opening day, over 50 people showed up. From Elmwood High students to families from Fairfax, Nathan stood before the crowd, dressed in a simple grey t-shirt, his voice deep yet inspiring. "I'm not here to turn you into soldiers. I'm here to teach you how to stand firm against injustice, protect what matters, and build a stronger community." Malik stood next to his father, feeling a sense of pride without a hint of doubt for the first time. He helped Nathan guide the first class, 20 teenagers aged 14 to 18, both white and of color. He taught them how to stay calm under pressure, just like his father had taught him. Mrs. Clara Evans enrolled her grandson, while Mr. Raymond Brooks sponsored drinks and snacks. Elmwood Springs was starting to change, not overnight, but through small, steady steps. At the end of the school year, Malik was invited to speak at the Elmwood High graduation ceremony. He stood on stage wearing a blue gown, looking down at over 300 students and parents. "I used to think I didn't belong here," he began, his voice clear. "But I learned that belonging isn't something others give you, it's something you create for yourself, by standing up, holding your head high, and not letting injustice define you." The crowd erupted in applause, and Zoe Harper, sitting in the front row, felt her eyes light up. She had just received a journalism scholarship for her series on the Walsh case, and she knew Malik was a huge source of inspiration. That night, the Carter family sat in their backyard, gazing at the twinkling stars in the Virginia sky. Sophia rested her head on Nathan's shoulder, their fingers intertwined. "Are you going back on duty?" she asked softly. Nathan was silent for a moment before replying, "Not yet. Elmwood Springs needs me more right now." Malik, sitting on the grass, chuckled lightly. "I like it this way better, all of us together." A week later, Nathan received a message from his Delta Force teammate Miller. "We're always watching, Carter. Stay strong." He smiled and put his phone away. Walsh, now facing years in prison, was no longer a threat. But Nathan knew the secrets he once held, photos, codes, might have leaked out somewhere. He wasn't worried if it came down to it. He would face it, just like he always had. Summer arrived and Malik played basketball on Maple Avenue, feeling for the first time free from judgmental eyes. Jamal and Chris tossed the ball with him, laughter ringing out. Mrs. Clara Evans waved from her porch, while Mr. Raymond Brooks brought out a chilled cooler of Gatorade. Elmwood Springs wasn't perfect. There were still cracks and biases, but it was healing thanks to a family that refused to back down. Nathan stood at the door looking at his son, feeling a sense of relief. He had fought in distant lands, but this battle, protecting Malik, transforming a community, was the most meaningful victory. Carter's legacy wasn't in medals or covert missions, but in the smiles on Maple Avenue, in a town learning to see each other with respect. Thank you for joining us on the journey of Malik, Nathan, and the Carter family. A story about resilience, family love, and the power to change communities. We hope you find inspiration in how they stood strong against adversity and turned their pain into a legacy. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe to the Legendary Narratives channel, and hit the bell so you won't miss our next inspiring stories. Every like and subscription fuels our passion to share even more meaningful tales. Thank you to our amazing audience for helping us spread the values of dignity and unity. We'll see you in the next video. Stay tough, stay proud, and see you soon.